conference last week.
Yeah, secure.
Okay, we are live and we are experiencing just a few technical difficulties. Yeah, Brian, sorry about that. And sorry, everybody. We are running a bit behind. Let me make sure I can get everybody in. Bear with me all. Okay, Bob, can you?
While you're doing it, yeah, we'll just take off while you're doing it. So, Phyllis, we were chatting a little bit beforehand. Why don't did you want to talk about IT Nation Secure last week? Because that was.
Oh, no. Well, I was not at IT Nation Secure. I did see Snoop Dogg, though, over
at PAX 8. Yeah.
PAX 8. So, you know, I took a selfie. I mean, I was like in the front row, but I took a selfie with myself and Snoop Dogg and sent it to my kids. So, you know.
It's amazing how these all these events really know their audience, because IT Nation Connect always has these 80-ish bands and like Snoop Dogg and all of these things. It's always like these event organizers really focus on like know your audience, know the people that are there, and get the right people in front of them as a main.
Pretty safe bet with Snoop Dogg though. He covers everything from my wife down to my teenagers. He covers that entire span.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There was an 80s band. Well, tell me about IT Nation. I thought PAX 8 went really well. I gave 2-3 talks, and it was great to see a lot of MSPs there, a lot of folks interested also in the sessions I attended in CMMC and what it takes to actually become CMMC certified. So they had some MSPs up there, and you know, it was a very interesting message. I don't know how many MSPs on this call are looking to get CMMC certified, but, you know, I think one of the messages that, you know, Lawrence Cruciana gave was, you know, it's really difficult. So if you don't have a big customer base or aren't banking on one, then, you know, don't do it. So that was like one of my big takeaways. I was like, okay, that's good to know. How was IT Nation, or do you have any comments on PAX 8?
IT Nation for me was pretty wonderful. I had a 4-hour session, which was the first time I actually had a session that long, and it was educational about M365 and how to implement security and how to make sure that the tenant is secure. And I lost my voice the day before because I was having a terrible cold. I'm still suffering from it just slightly, but I remember halfway through thinking, "Holy crap, 4 hours is actually really long." The feedback I've received was absolutely amazing. As I understand, it was one of the most visited sessions at IT Nation Secure, and like having a captive audience of, I think we had 120 people in the room for 4 hours is absolutely amazing. I think 1 or 2 people left. That's it.
Wow, that's great. So what was your session on specifically? How to lock it down?
How to lock down your tenant, but mostly from the perspective of how MSP shouldn't accept the defaults, because we too often make the mistake of taking what Microsoft is saying and saying like, you know what, good enough. But M365 has been designed for collaboration, and that means that security takes second place in that case. So there's
third place, fifth place.
There's a lot of balance.
All right, thanks for joining. Hey, Patrick.
And there's Jeff.
Apologies. I am not sure. This is a first for us.
We've had a lot of firsts lately, Andrew. So we're man.
That's it's a great theme, huh, Patrick?
Sorry.
Well played. So let me in interest of time. So thanks for everybody watching. Thank you for your patience, Patrick. Jeff, thank you for your patience dealing with the always fun technology problems that we can have. I was going to talk about a few things in banter, but in interest of time, I'm not going to today. Let me kind of set the stage. Patrick, Jeff, Gary Pico couldn't make it, so Bob Miller is going to play those first questions. And we'll get right on into it. But let me kind of set things in doing so and introduce everybody. So as always, welcome to the CyberCall. First off, happy Father's Day. Patrick, I hope you had a great one. I know you have a few boys. Jeff, do you have kids as well, right? Yeah. Okay.
Just the one. Yeah.
One. Awesome. And Kelvin, I never asked you, kids as well or no? No kids. Okay.
No kids.
Okay.
No kids. My wife and I are called dinks, as I recently learned.
What's that?
Dual
Dinks.
income, no
Dual
kids,
income, no
meaning
kids.
they just have a money room in their house, and every once in a while, open a
Yeah,
door,
yeah,
they
pretty
roll
much.
around, They're like, yeah, woo.
I'm coming to the Netherlands, Cal.
I'm just-
And I'm hanging with the Tegelars. This sounds pretty damn good.
I got one about to
Yeah,
graduate
it's-
high school in 2 days, and I'm told he doesn't get off the payroll for some time. So.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
they
count
don't.
on that, Patrick.
Yeah, I just hit the empty nester phase, Patrick. So yes, it does. But they're awesome. All right, so we have something that obviously impacted a lot of MSPs. This is and I'm really glad Patrick and Jeff came on, because a lot of times, you'll hear something like this and immediately, I think as knee-jerk reaction, we immediately Kelvin go, oh, it's the vendor, right? I mean, so often these days, that's become the knee-jerk reaction with all the issues going on. So I appreciate these guys coming here and talking to us. The recent decision to rotate the code signing certificates across Automate, Screen Connect, and RMM triggered quote unquote security concerns, of course. And this was seemingly started by some independent researcher that started making noise about the way you guys were doing things. Although you guys went through the process and went through and updated everything, it seemed obviously would have some ripple effects in the industry. It impacted MSPs, etc. So in order to do that, MSPs obviously had to coordinate, get their, make sure everything was working properly, especially if they were, I believe, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, on-prem specifically, right? This was for...
Yeah. I mean, we updated our cloud and on-prem, but the long tail for us is always making sure we can get in touch with the right people at the MSP or wherever to say, hey, you got to go get this done. And, things go into junk folders or clutter folders, or you got the wrong person, or there's 1,001 reasons why that becomes difficult.
Absolutely. So with that, let's do some quick intros. I'll turn it to Bob for questions, but starting off with you, Jeff, this is a first for you. Thanks for joining us here. Probably not under hey, I'd love to come on under this circumstance, but I appreciate you doing it. But by the way, I think it's a hallmark of quality leadership to address things in the way you guys are doing it. So thanks for doing so.
Yeah, no, happy to. Yeah, Jeff Bishop's a EP over at product management side of the world at ConnectWise. I've been around here for, I don't know, about 10 years. And Andrew and I have worked together in the past for a while on different projects and things. So, and then, I originally was with one of the founders of Screen Connect back, feels like 100 years ago nowadays. So it's, but yeah, look after the product management here at ConnectWise, along with Russ Humphreys. So
awesome. Thanks for joining, Jeff. Okay, Patrick, good to see you back. It's been a while.
Thanks, Andrew. And we got to tell you, we got to do one of these where we don't have an event to talk about. I can tell you about fun stuff that we're doing here at ConnectWise. But Patrick Beggs, Chief Information Security Officer at ConnectWise. So happy. It's just always like being on this, Andrew. You have got a great crew. We're real happy to maybe put out some education today. So.
Yeah, appreciate it, Patrick. And then Kelvin, thanks for filling in as a guest co-host as always. I wanted you on as somebody that builds code yourself, and in a short order, you've got, I guess, what is it, north of 8,000 now using SIP. So that's a staggering number in a short period of time. So good for you. But for those that may not know you, which is hard to believe anyone doesn't, tell us a little about yourself.
Wow, it's so weird to do these introductions these days. Creator of CyberDrain, founder of SIP. SIP is an M365 multi-tenant management tool, which still is quite a mouthful. I need to find a solution to say that a bit quicker. But and at the same time, an MSP owner, CTO at Lime Networks, a fast-growing MSP in the Netherlands and parts of Europe. We're expanding into Belgium and Germany over time. So I get the luck, I guess, to see everything from both sides of the fence. I'm very involved with Microsoft. I'm a 7 times Microsoft MVP. I'm actually today in Edinburgh at a Microsoft event speaking for them. So I'm very lucky that I get to be involved in the vendor side, the Microsoft side, the MSP side, and because of that, I'm able to reflect on a lot of these incidents. And this is actually one of those incidents where I'm saying that it's almost wasn't necessary, but we'll get into that during the actual questions. And
Kelvin, is being in Edinburgh, is that why we hear a hint of a Scottish accent from you today? Is that?
It might be.
All right. And if you can, if it doesn't come up, would you, being involved with Microsoft, can you at the right time just explain the whole Microsoft to just Cert type of thing? If Jeff might get to it sooner, but if not, will you get to that as well? So,
sure. Yeah,
so Bob,
absolutely.
let me let you play
Absolutely.
Gary, since Gary couldn't make it today, and welcome everybody out there again. Once out there watching, thank you for your patience. Mr. Miller, I'll let you kick it off.
All right, thank you. So Jeff, I think before we get too deep into this, that we're going to have a bunch of people out here who actually do not actually know what code signing certificates do, what role they play. You want to try and bring everybody up to spec on what they really kind of serve as part of from a security perspective.
Sure, happy to. Yeah, and look, and I'm a novice. I think one of the jokes like you stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night kind of thing. So that's I sit on the product management side of the house and dabble on the engineering side. But for code signing, it's going out to a third party group, a certificate authority, and saying, hey, I need to be a way to sign my software. So as I deliver it outbound to customers, and the biggest thing is agents that go down on the machines is where people typically see this. I need to be able to say, this is my code. I signed it. There's hash, created and public private key exchanges, but it's so that when the code gets delivered, you know where it came from and who it came from. And then also if anybody tries to modify or change that in any way, shape or form, then that invalidates that certificate. So you can tell if somebody, a malicious actor, somebody hopped into that code and did something that they shouldn't have. So it's identification as well as making sure what they get is what we think it should be as it gets delivered outbound.
Yeah, and I don't think most people know that sometimes they can have an expiration date, right? That's another thing.
Yeah, they do.
Which if they didn't, they know now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So can you walk us through what kind of prompted ConnectWise to have to rotate certificates? Because I think that kind of gets to the heart of the question, right? Like,
Yeah.
you had to do that for Screen Connect, Automate, and RMM. So what triggered that decision other than the public advisory?
Yeah. So Andrew kind of keyed in on some of the high level aspects of it. And Patrick, please, hop in and correct me where I may miss something or forget something. But around the 4th or 5th of this month, we got a notification that a researcher had flagged something, and that our CA came back and said, hey, looks like maybe there's something going on with your cert. We're going to have to revoke it, and you're going to have to re-sign everything and get it out the door. So we know how long that takes, especially for like a Screen Connect where there's tens of thousands of tenants that are out there. So we got to go back in and not just redo our build and get the new cert assigned and get it out the door. We got to get it reinstalled across millions of endpoints and across tens of thousands of instances. And then we were utilizing, which is not, I shouldn't say it's not a best practice, but probably not the smartest thing to do at our scale, which is also have the same cert attached to our RMM product lines and Screen Connect. We didn't really know exactly what the problem was at that moment in time. We were told that something to do with the way some of the configuration information was being presented. Initially, we thought it was tied to like an XML file or that was on the machine. So we went in, did a bunch of checks, validations around that XML. We're like, no, we think we're good. We'll figure it out. But it's going to take us 3 or 4 days just to get this all redeployed. And we had a deadline of like Tuesday. So we're like, all right, well, this is going to be quick and fast. And we've got to go get all 3 of these products rebuilt out the door. So we started moving. On Friday, we were able to sit down. I think that's the 6th. And from a timeline perspective, we were told, like, hey, about midday our time, East Coast, we're like, hey, let's get together with, let's talk, CA ourselves and a few others. And then we were saying, well, and by the way, we've got the a report for you. I don't think it was the formal report, but sort of a higher level analysis. Patrick, you would know better than me, and then I'll keep going on timeline.
And I'll back up a second too, is we work with researchers every week, every month, all the time. We have I'd like to think a pretty mature vulnerability disclosure program. Shout out to Jason Ferguson and his team, who kicks some butt. And they work with researchers when either vulnerability or a defect is identified. And there's normally a back and forth for validation, or lack thereof. And then we work with them on either just public disclosure, private disclosure, CED, all that. What Jeff is highlighting is we didn't, on Tuesday, we didn't even know why. On Friday, the researcher report was provided to us, but it had been provided directly to the other authorities. So unfortunately, we didn't get to have that timeline of back and forth for validation and some other things that we do.
So they basically did an end around, Patrick, instead of working with you. For lack of a better word,
I'm not going to get, I'm not going to speculate on what their intent was at all. But again,
no, not intent. But I'm just saying they didn't give you the courtesy like normally. Like if Kelvin's playing white hat, he would come to you and go, "Hey, I see this."
Right. Yeah. Sometimes people will submit these types of things very briefly as abuse reports, Andrew, right? And we do get a lot of abuse reports on Screen Connect because a lot of time prem Screen Connect instances are popped and used for bad things, right? Jeff knows that. So that unfortunately it wasn't submitted as a vulnerability disclosure. So yeah, to your point, they went straight to the certificate authorities. So.
By the way, I'm not sure if anybody uses this just because we mentioned Screen Connect and that Kelvin, have you heard of this one called Simple Help? Just quick tangent, Patrick.
Yeah. Actually, we have a couple of tools running, scripts running on our endpoints using our RMM to make sure that these kind of tools don't get installed because there's so many bad actors. Simple Help is one of them. There was another one, Easy something, that was really popular in exploiting workstations. They just convinced someone to download it and execute it from their own.
Thank you for that, Kelvin. I'm just taking a moment to give this to everybody out there. To Kelvin's point about application blacklisting, right, Kelvin? For this point, you're looking for agents that shouldn't be installed. And again, gosh, I'm drawing a blank on this on the terminology, but living off the, for lack of a better word, living off the land. But this is a new one, Kelvin, that I'm not sure if you saw. Has another vulnerability right now that's being used and abused with ransomware. It's called Simple Help. For those out there, again, make sure this one is in your list to don't allow installation of. If clients are not running it, it's an up and coming one. So sorry, Jeff, go ahead, please.
No.
I think what's really interesting, especially because if you've been a programmer as long as I have since the 80s, then certificates have always been. I mean, they've been around for a very long time, but it's one of the older technologies that is in the stack, right? And so most people don't actually understand how all those interact with one another. And back when we were using them originally, there wasn't a cybersecurity terminology to be worried about. So, setting them up to be more segmented and, isolated, and just like you segmented network, those are all sort of new things that we have to consider as it relates to that older technology. And what if you're hauling freight, building software? Probably not priority one to go back and re-engineer something that's been in place for a long time. So I can understand, why anybody, right? And so Kelvin, you write software, right? You know exactly what we're talking about, right? You got to be able to view that and maintain it. And like you guys did, you were able to kind of mitigate this. Other than anytime you make a change, coordinating with 1 million people is a problem. Right? Coordinating with 2 people is a problem, much less a huge number like you guys have. So can you, Jeff, can you kind of walk us through what prompted ConnectWise to go ahead and start rotating those code signing certificates?
Well, I'll finish the very quick on timeline because I think that's part that was most important. As we actually got to see the report, we realized that what we were trying to fix actually wasn't the problem.
Right.
It was that, and again, try to break it down into the way I can understand it as a product manager. If I take the area that we signed, from a code signing perspective, said, yep, this is the code, this is the agent, you're good. Because we were an on-prem product first and then kind of moved to the cloud, we were a multi-instance type product, so that it could be installed on your servers, on our servers. That required a URL. We had to be able to say, like a relay and a URL, like say, here's how you get back from the agent to us. And what we did was we passed some of that information along in a configuration, like a buffer area of the file, the agent that we were sending down. As far as I know, that is not, illegal, or we shouldn't be doing anything like it was, but potentially not the best practices today in the way you should probably be delivering some of those things. But the technology or the capability was there, and it was supported, and we've been doing it for years and years and years and never had any issues with it. The way the report read out was that if somebody got access to a Screen Connect tenant, they would be able to go in and modify that configuration and be able to, instead of passing down maybe our URL or the relay or whatever else, they were potentially going to pass down a link for like malware. And then if they could get Kelvin or Andrew or somebody to install that agent on their machine, then they would be able to bring that in. And because our agent was co-signed by us, that it would potentially allow it back into the system because of whitelisting and other things that have been set up. So they were looking at it as less of like a vulnerability, the way some of this kind of got portrayed or talked about in social media, other places, but more of this is a way to get stuff down onto a machine, kind of behind the scenes a little bit. Now, again, that A had their own Screen Connect tender, have access to yours, and then B, talk somebody into somehow to putting an agent on their machine, which with any remote control tool, if you can do one or both of those, you probably already have a pretty major problem on your hands. But I'm not questioning whether or not we should do this or fix it. We all sat down and said, okay, let's go back and figure out a way to remediate this and get it out the door. But in the middle of all that, we had to go redo all of our bills. They gave us until Tuesday, or like that next to like the 10th, I think was the actual date. And then they gave us a little bit longer until the 13th before everything finally got completely revoked. So we had to go redo all of our builds for all three product lines. We had to move them. We were using exportable certs, if anybody's familiar with that concept. And we had to move to a hardware-based, an HSM cert for all these, which required us rebuilding the way or modifying the way all of our build processes worked on all three product lines. In the middle of all that, we had two other issues. One is we started rolling out the Screen Connect fix because we thought it was going to take us 3 or 4 or 5 days to get it done. And we got tagged again for two things. One was, do not go out and keep using the same cert on multiple products, because that's going to get red flagged and we're potentially going to revoke again. And oh, by the way, we've already seen another report of the same type of utilization with that cert 2 that you just started kind of rolling out the door. So both certs that we had within X number of days of each other getting flagged all at the same time, plus the requirement that we also separated and segregated all products into their own certs. So we had until the 13th to get the first part of this all resolved. And now we have until the 20th, 21st, depending on your time zone, to get the second aspect of all this resolved. So we've gone through, we've redeployed all of our clouds. We've got all the builds out for all of our on-prem partners. If any of our automated on-prem partners are listening, please update. I think we're about 38% of our partners have updated so far. So we need the other, roughly 60% of you to get there. So that's what all we did. And that's how we kind of got to the procedure where we're at. So I'll pause there.
I just wanted to circle back a little bit on the start of your talk, because that's something I really want to emphasize. It's the theoretical application of this. I don't even want to call it a vulnerability. It is a potential misconfiguration issue that could cause potential harm. It's not even a vulnerability, and it's been. How did ConnectWise react internally when they found out, like, hey, it's not even something that is in the realm of possibilities directly? Because it generated a lot of work for MSPs to immediately update all of their servers as soon as your updates were available. The timeline was very short. So I'm really interested in how internally at ConnectWise you guys reacted to finding out that it's not an actual deep vulnerability, but more something that is a potential misconfiguration issue.
I'll let Patrick hop in if he wants to here in a second, but I'll start and go say, look, when we saw it, and our initial reaction was a little bit like skeptical. Like, is this really a vulnerability? Is this really why we, get our cert kind of revoked? But as we looked through and talked about it internally, we said, hey, we've got to make sure that we hold ourselves to as high of a standard as possible, considering our role in this space. And if this is going to be something that's going to cause problems and lead to malicious actors doing things, let's go get it fixed. So skepticism, a little bit of like, man, how hard is this going to be? All of my product engineering teams who worked pretty much 24 hours a day for a better part of like 4 or 5 days certainly would have preferred to maybe done this as a vulnerability report and had weeks or months to go solve it. But so skepticism at first, but then the reality sets in. Look, this is the situation. It is what it's going to be. We've got to go get it fixed and get it done as quickly as possible. So more of a rallying around everything. And now I'm sitting there, Kelvin, you develop code. So now I'm telling all of them like, hey, everything that you've told me was going to take a month, I now know you can do in 3 days. So we're going to speed up development cycles.
Hey, easy, Jeff.
Yeah. Jeff, unless you want to start writing code, you may want to reel that back just a tiny bit.
They know I'm kidding. They know
I know.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Jeff and I, we had, definitely, this was, I will say, from a threat modeling scenario, validation and alerts. We'll say not misconfigurations, but tampering with certs, right? Calvin, you get this, right? We're looking to try to identify some detection gaps, right? Around this theme. This one, I'm not sure I can come up with a detection, either a process or technology that would detect it per se. But you know what? Hindsight's 2020 now, so that's what we're gonna be doing is really hitting the whiteboard and saying, okay, working with Jeff's folks, working with David Rassenpour, who runs all of product engineering, is hey, how can we shorten this up from a playbook standpoint? From a revoke cert, we got the playbook down now. I'll tell you that. And that's what you want to do and learn from these things is be able to shorten your response time as much as possible. This one was a pretty short one, but we're taking a look at any detective or any processes that we could put in place. So,
Patrick, question for you. Like, if I look at like the Verizon DBIR this year, and they look at edge device patching, right? It was like only 54%. Even with patches out, got remediated.
Yep. Yeah.
You guys are dealing with something, again, arguably, and the reason I wanted to bring on Kelvin is, again, MSPs can be very skeptical.
Sure.
So that's why I have Kelvin on, like going, was this really necessary? Probably wasn't a top priority for ConnectWise, but now we've got you guys more so. I see the bigger problem. You guys stepped up and did the right thing, but now we've got, like Jeff was saying, we've got like 60 some odd % that we got to make sure get things updated. So I see this more as an operational risk now than anything. And can you talk about that? Because it's almost like race against patching the same way. Hey, the patch is there, fix it, and people sit around and don't patch.
Right. So rewind to February, March 2024, right? With an externally facing an externally exploitable Screen Connect vulnerability. And Jeff, I know our patching numbers there weren't the best at first, right? So it took a level of adoption, it took awareness, it took calls like this, it took folks to understand that, listen, there's an issue out there, and this, especially for MSPs, this is your livelihood, and this is your end user's livelihood. And I know all of you do that, right? There's different reasons why folks are a little bit, slow. Maybe they're testing things internally. I totally get that. So this is, a lot of lessons learned we leverage from a crisis communication standpoint, which I can't say enough on these things. It may not be a cyber issue per se, to the core, but the heck of it's not a crisis comms issue. And if you don't have a crisis comms playbook, in place, that now we have a chapter for this type of thing. And I know I'm not trying to deflect here, but was such an important part of this response as well. So.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, it's I not to beat a dead horse here, Patrick and team, but like this is the thing, you sit there and when you look at, I was literally reading the Verizon DBIR today for something else, and you sit there and go, wait, the majority of edge exploitation vulnerabilities, those patches are available, right? All day long. And so, it's now we got this it's frustrating. And I know Kelvin, I think you share the same thing. Now we've created this freaking operational problem. Like, we've created work that I don't know necessarily need to be created.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is you guys were, Patrick, you guys were stuck in between a rock and a hard place, right? Because once you're told about it, you got to make a business decision, how we're going to react to it. And if you don't, then that sends a message. And if you do, then you got the operational overhead. So I understand that it is what it is. And I think you guys did the exact right thing, given the circumstances you were placed in. But to everyone's point, was this juice worth the entire ecosystem squeeze to resolve it to everyone's satisfaction? I think that's where the real debate is, to be honest.
Kelvin, thanks, Bob. You were going to say something, Kelvin?
You and I had a talk, and Andrew and I had a talk before this, during the incident. We called each other just to chat and catch up. And I already said that at that moment, I was super frustrated. I met Patrick Beggs during Secure, and we were talking about it. It was like, hey, what's going on?
Thanks for not quoting me.
No problem. I contacted some of my friends at Microsoft even to talk about this. Like, hey, what exactly is this? And it was, no one knew exactly what it was, except that a security researcher was pretty much bullying everyone to get his will done. And that is not the way that we should be handling security in our industry. It upsets me because you know what's going to happen next time a big issue is actually reported and an executive hears it? He's going to say, well, this might just be a storm in a glass of water, as we have the Dutch idiom, and we're going to wait it out a little, and then we might have a bigger problem. Executives are going to have less trust in security researcher because this was ballooned into so much unneeded work. It's actually a pretty sad event if we look at it that way, because this could have been resolved in a month, in 2 months, in 3 months, without any added risk to MSPs. There was zero added risk. I mean, if you already control the server, you could already deploy ransomware everywhere. If you already controlled the endpoint or controlled what's installed on the endpoint, you could already deploy ransomware there. It wasn't an increased risk. It's truly a little bit of a sad event.
Yeah, interesting.
Well,
Bob,
Kelvin,
do you have any others? Or
no, I'm about to hand it over to Kelvin. I finished. We covered all ours. So,
all
go
right,
ahead, Kelvin.
Mr. T. Mr. T. That's a new name for you, Kelvin. I just realized that. You're the new Mr. T.
Oh God. Oh God, please no. Actually, we were talking about the involvement of the code signing certificate itself. Has ConnectWise made any other decisions based on this incident on what long-term improvements they should do in how you manage code signing or how you manage deployment security and all of these things? Have there been made any decisions about that?
A few, and I do want to say, look, while this was all regrettable and we hate all the work that we cause all of our partners and everybody using our products, I will say that the different technology companies that we were working with behind the scenes to try to get extended times to get more feedback and insights, and maybe some people that could come in and help us out with some of the questions that we had. They did help us, and they helped us a ton on some of that. So won't go into all the company names involved, but I really appreciate everybody who jumped in to help us out. The changes that we've made. So we had to make a quick change to the way the agent was being built for Screen Connect. So we've removed that configuration information out, separated it in its own file. I'm sure a lot of people aren't overly excited with the way that deployment is going out the door, but we had to get something quick in place to separate those two. The team is all ready. I had some of the product engineering leadership by my office about a half an hour ago saying, we're already working on it. We think we can solve this. We already have a plan. Give us another day or so. This is going to be days, weeks, not weeks and months, in order to get something else out the door that creates a better experience. The other thing that we did sit down on Friday, Thursday and Friday this week was, look, as a remote control, because we talked about it, as a remote control tool, we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard in some regards. We know that we've seen our builds, like not vulnerabilities, but we've seen people utilizing our software in malicious ways. I remember the first time I saw Screen Connect on Pirates Bay, it, drove me and my old business partners pretty crazy, and we're trying to figure out what can we do to stop it. And this has also opened up a world of opportunities to talk to some people like yourselves and others who are like, hey, why don't you try this? And hey, this company did that. And so we are starting to take actions around the way we do trials. We've done some of this over the years. Don't get me wrong. It's not like we just been sitting around on, and doing nothing, but we're going to change the way we do trials. We're going to change the way we do purchasing. We're going to get more information about the partners who are consuming our product lines. And we're going to try to hold that level of accountability, both cloud and on-prem. We've had AI in place for years now. Probably not the best name in the world for it, but we called it Scammer Hammer back in the day. And so how do we try to continue to grow our AI capability to prevent people from misusing the product? So both from an operational and a business perspective, it may cost us a little bit because we may actually fire some customers here or there because they're not willing to give us a level of insights that we need to make sure the product isn't being maliciously used. But also building in some additional telemetry data so that we can identify that better and faster, that we can pass along to the security experts out there. So you'll see a lot of changes over the next 3 or 4 or 5 months from ConnectWise in all aspects around all of our products, but particularly our trial-based products like Screen Connect.
Yeah, I'll jump on what Jeff said. It's tightening a lot of those external controls and how how those are managed, right? From a supply chain standpoint, we have a few, and we're still. I'm not going to do I don't quite have a formalized lessons learned yet because we're still working through it. But I think there's always going to be room for in our supply chain kind of risk identification for this type of thing as well, especially the certificate behavior, new products. Let me tell you, it's going to be something triple checked with any new products, right? To ensure integrity and that they're we're not falling back on any previous say riskier behavior from a development standpoint.
Yeah, awesome. So I actually have one more question, and that's mostly around. So we already spoke about how this actually wasn't a real vulnerability, but more around configuration, a potential issue around configuration, and we know that the certificate revoking was completely preventive, but just so we're absolutely 100% clear, and that everyone who's watching this and rewatching this on Reddit or wherever they're getting this, can you clarify if you've seen any evidence that malicious actor obtained any of the older code signing certificate, or that they like it's already clear from our entire conversation. It's just always good to ask the question directly. Have you seen any evidence of the code signing certificate actually being compromised?
We have not seen any direct evidence of that yet. So.
Yeah, I'll echo Patrick, but he's the CISO, so his voice carries way more weight on this than mine. So, but yes, I agree.
And we made a public announcement on May 28th about an internal event that we contacted very small number of partners. This had nothing to do with that. Nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely love that answer. Just being able to hard say no just clears up so much for people who are online spreading rumors about what type of incident this actually was.
I would not be in this career long if I sat in these platforms and misled you on that, because that's just not how I roll. It's not how ConnectWise operates. And I know it's not how this community operates. You either be transparent or get the heck out. I love it. So, yeah.
Good. Kelvin, do you have others? I forgot exactly if we got them all in or.
No, I think I got them all in, and Jeff was very expansive on his answers, so he covered a lot of my questions very early. So thank you for that, Jeff.
All right, we'll go over to Phyllis.
Yeah, sure. So you said like around 40% of your customers have done what they need to do, which is interesting and surprisingly low. So have you had much feedback from partners about service disruptions, RMM agent failures, or integrations breaking because of the certificate change? And then, as you did that, how did your support team triage and respond to all the issues?
Yeah, so just a bit of a clarification. All of our cloud-based applications are fully deployed and agents are calling back in, and those are, they're 100% deployed, and then which is a large portion of our customer base, right? And then, yes, there are agents that are still offline. I'm sure a lot of them are calling in today. And so I'm sure our support team is dealing with some of that right now. As far as integrations go, I'm not aware of any. I actually did reach out to our support team this morning and ask for what are some of the most common things they're seeing or hearing, any sort of patterns. Still, the biggest pattern is just sort of one-off environmental, trying to get something redeployed, having an issue with things like this version of Linux or something to do with a Mac or a security setting or an EDR setting that they're trying to figure out. But most of these have still been one-off. I do expect, as probably like everybody else here, is that when an agent code signing is revoked, that the EDRs or the AVs, depending on how they're configured or set up, are going to flag these things, which means they get quarantined, which means they can't call back in. And then you've got to decide how you want to handle that. Redeploy, reinstall, unquarantine for a half a minute, let it call in and get checked in. I'm not making any recommendations on any of that. I'm just saying that we've seen everything from like SCCM to Intune to using other RMMs to our RMMs to using remote control tools. Because while we are ConnectWise, a lot of our partners have a competing RMM, but with Screen Connect, or they have our RMM and maybe with a different remote control tool. A lot of them use Intune. So there's so many different ways to potentially redeploy these things. And I think everybody's starting to figure out what's their best practice for them, depending on their size and scale and their customers' requirements from a regulatory and compliance perspective.
Excellent. Just out of curiosity, what percentage of your customers are on-prem versus cloud?
Across the board, it's a little different. Like for our Automate, from an RMM perspective, I'm just trying to do the quick math in my head. It's about 25%, 20 to 25%. And then the other 20%. And then from a Screen Connect perspective, it's actually much smaller. 10, 8, it's probably about 4 to 5% of Screen Connect customers that are on-prem.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, how to do the math in my head. That's a good question.
Well, I'm just always curious, like what the percentages are, from a controls perspective, like what needs to be addressed, what doesn't need to be addressed.
Sure.
We know that a number of MSPs rely on automation platforms. And we briefly talked about, third-party integrations. You said they were pretty low. Does anything stand out that broke unexpectedly because they relied on certain specific certificate fingerprints? And, what's your message to MSPs that are managing these things that are so brittle and can break so readily?
Most of the integration partners that we have utilize one of our agents for deployments, or they integrate into the UI or the overall experience. So they're far less reliant upon our agent in terms of their operation, other than potentially where we might deploy their software, like an EDR or a backup tool, where we use our RMM to potentially deploy their agents on their behalf. Most are API-based integrations where they bring in. So from that regards, not too much. From an MSP perspective, I think the biggest areas that we're seeing is how do you whitelist these applications? How do you set up the controls? How are you doing your deployment and your of different agents and different tools? And what are your backups for when these kind of things occur? Hopefully it's not a code signing issue for us or any of the other. I don't wish this on any other vendor out there. I don't care who they are. But you might run into an issue, right? You might run into a technical issue. I can go back a dozen years ago, and I can remember seeing where, agents getting uninstalled on different product lines. I won't go to which product lines, but I remember seeing it. And it's like, well, how do you get these redeployed? If that was your only method of doing so, you don't want to run trucks. So having some of those backups is probably the biggest thing that I would recommend to make sure how would you handle this in a crisis. Patrick kind of alluded to it earlier. Crisis comms and crisis processes, and making sure you've got it well documented so you know exactly what you're going to do. And we're seeing, I know one company individually that tens of thousands of endpoints, tens and tens and tens, short of 100,000, but big. And they got everything redeployed in like an hour or so. So
wow.
Yeah, pretty impressive when I saw it. I was like, I want to go back and document and see how they did it 100%, but I was pretty impressed when I heard those numbers.
Can I get on my soapbox about the whitelisting and some best practices, Jeff?
Sure.
Man, obviously when a code signing certificate, like the one we have is revoked, security tools, your EDR tools are designed to flag and block software signed, with an invalid or expired certificate, right? In case it's critical to ensure some systems are running ConnectWise, Screen Connect remain operational, right? Obviously, we want the latest version. You might have to explicitly, instruct these tools to trust that executable. But and we worked with the EDR vendors, provided samples for the review. But it still reinforces the independent verification on the MSP or the end customer's part to ensure the integrity and trustworthiness of newly signed code. So as we're working with vendors to complete their new review and update their definitions, these false positives will begin to fall off. So pre-approved, around the pre-approved or whitelist new certificates. But it is important to know, when I put this out there, this should be this all should be done on the thumbprint hash or the file SHA hash, not the entire directory. So Kelvin, if you want to put that in the global chat, it's just a friendly reminder that you don't have to do this on the entire directory from a whitelisting standpoint. Just the small part. So. I know that might be a stating the obvious, but just kind of my public service announcement there. So, and again, thanks to my team and Jeff's team for really diving deep on the nuances of things that we assume people know, but getting some feedback that they maybe didn't. So.
That's awesome. Thanks. And I think we can see in the chat, and you two are here, we appreciate the transparency and, really letting everybody know what's going on, and what's happening in this situation. I mean, I think you already kind of gave out guidance, organizations or the MSPs. Do you have any additional guidance you want to give for MSPs running RMM and remote access tools to handle a similar situation, or, supply chain threats or anything, if something like this were to happen in the future?
Always, Phyllis, and I'm going to say things that I know will resonate, is please enforce multi-factor authentication on all privilege accounts and remote access tools. I'll say that again. MFA, if possible, on all privilege accounts and your RMM tools. Saying this enough, we're always, our identity journey at ConnectWise is one that will never end from a maturity standpoint. Using role-based access controls, you'd be surprised a lot of folks just don't do it to limit access for those specific job responsibilities. Also, implementing just-in-time access if you can to reduce your attack surface. It goes back to what Andrew was saying from supply chain. From a vulnerability attack surface, know your critical assets and what version you should be on, which ties back to this. Phyllis, to your question about 40% patched. We ran this last year, was a challenge too. So really, it's the basics that are going to keep folks, uptime and profitable. It really is. But I can't say this enough. Is know where those are deployed, how they're configured, where do they sit, and again, like Jeff said earlier, for this to be truly exploited, it would require administrative access to that infrastructure and to your environment. It is not it's not publicly exploitable, but doesn't mean it's not going to happen. So.
Right.
Patrick, can I just say something real quick? Because I thought your words are really important. Oftentimes, a lot of times MSPs are struggling, right, with non-regulated customers about selling things like VTSO services, right? And our job, I feel like, is doing the utmost we can within budget reason, right? The best security for that organization. And, the fact that you mentioned, no understanding where your critical assets are, right? What critical systems, processes they support, and obviously revenue. For MSPs, right, we're talking about critical systems and processes that support revenue. And it's like those words about the conversations, right? We as MSPs, and maybe I'll just, ask, you, Kelvin, right? Like that's the kinds of conversations we have to really be driving with customers about critical systems, processes of revenue, not this is the security threat, this is that, because again, it's not the language they speak. And I talk about this week in and week out.
Yeah, so we actually we have a strong security team, a large security team at our MSP. It's now 14 FTE that is directly involved in security. And whenever they go to a client, they don't talk to them about, oh, it's this specific CVE that you might be suffering from and you might get hacked from. They just go to them and say like, hey, currently your primary source of revenue is at danger of being hacked with a medium priority or a medium priority and impact potential issue. We need to go solve that. And sometimes they go to them like, hey, this is something very minor to you. It won't have any impact on your revenue, but if you fix this, we'll be able to sort of chain things together and resolve things in a way that it will impact how much money you're making. It's you cannot have an executive conversation with your clients, no matter the size of the MSP. If it is a one-person MSP, or if you have like I do a large security team, if you go to the client and you talk to them about CVEs and potential damage and what the exploit actually does, they will not understand anything. You actually have to go to them and explain to them like, hey guys, this is going to have a direct impact on your line of business if we don't fix it now, if we don't fix it in a week, if we don't fix it in a month. And if you start saying like it might cost you $1 million if this actually happens, they start understanding, oh wait, I could lose $1 million if I don't fix this. Let's go take care of it. It's you have to actually speak their language. And so many MSPs still come with technical details. Leave those technical details behind. Especially when you're talking about a line of business app. When you're talking about a line of business app, you go to the client and say, your most important application is having an issue. Let's fix that. And then also do that internally as well. Look at how much money it would cost you if your RMM got hacked because you were not looking at things, or if your remote control tool got hacked, or if any other tool that has the ability to run something on your client's machines. What would it cost me if this would happen? MSPs do not analyze that enough. And the moment that you do start looking at it, you're like, holy shit, this is horrifying. I will need to react to any incident that happens with this with the utmost priority, instead of leaning back and waiting a couple of weeks to install an update because, it might inconvenience our help desk a little while.
Yeah. Well said, Calvin. Well said. Phyllis, I think I might have cut you off from your...
Oh, no. I mean, it's fine. I was going to go off script because this is when I pet peeves is, Patrick, you triggered me when, through your, and I'll ask everyone on the panel, you all deal with end customers. Obviously, we're talking about MSPs themselves. What is the barrier to updating your software? Tell me, what's the barrier for people to patch, to update, to do these things that week over week, we always say, just do it. I just need to know. Tell me, when you get that feedback, tell me, what is it?
I mean, I totally understand and respect that. I mean, we're a 3,500 person company with, I like to think, some pretty mature, information security capabilities. And, we're constantly scanning our environments and our application inventory, right? We have a lot of automation in place, right? But smaller MSPs don't have that, right? So I think there probably is, a resource challenge, probably a tool challenge, right? You guys are operating on defined budgets, and that you don't necessarily have access or mature capabilities in place, but it does. So it might take more of a manual process, or somebody wearing 2 or 3 different hats. And that Wednesday they did something else, right? And when they were supposed to check their asset inventory from a vulnerability standpoint. I totally understand that. So it's why we're doing these types of things. It's why you guys are out here, really preaching what you're preaching. But I think it's just, it's a scaling issue, I think, is my best answer. So.
Patrick, and if I could just jump in behind you again, I'll beat the Verizon DBIR report this year. Phyllis, remember, there was real asymmetry, they called it, between enterprise and SMB this year. Significant. I don't know if you saw that, Patrick, but it was enterprise is at 39% versus MSPs at 86% in terms of breach, ransomware related breaches, etc. So it was, to your point, right? It's not only certainly process, but process and resources that SMBs are lacking.
We've done some incident responses for partners, and I'll be like, hey, listen, I'm talking to their security point of contact. I say, hey, can you bring the IT administrator on the call? And he goes, oh, I'm here. I say, can you talk to who does your vulnerability? And he just cuts me off. I'm here. You know, and he goes, oh, by the way, I run the budget for the company too. And I'm just like, oh man, I'm sorry, buddy. Well, let's work through this. You know, that's a real anecdote. That actually was true.
Good.
I mean,
So-
I think about that and I wonder like what we as security professionals can do to help with this. So I'll think on that.
Yeah, Phyllis, and kind of rounding things out, there was this other thing I saw today. You know, often we talk about our, you know, our frustration with our clients and this, that, and the other. There was this, there's an article, I'll put it in here, about, you know, North Carolina and Georgia being disrupted for cyber attacks. And literally the quote was that, you know, it says that it wasn't until the final month of the prior administration in December 2024, this is after 5 years or so of that efforts to secure a comprehensive backup system were initiated. Like this is, you know, government, and again, I know we know, oh, well, government has limited resources, this, that, and the other, but you know, this is not, you know, Phyllis, we talk about it. It's not just enterprise. It's not just, it's, you know, MSPs are like, why am I on my clients? It's this seemingly more ubiquitous mindset of, you know, head in the sand mentality often that we're dealing with. So yeah, it's a sign of the times, and hopefully we can continue to fight the good fight and get people to change it.
But, you know, I think it speaks to what everyone, you know, at least on the panel knows, is like, you can't scare the bejesus out of everybody and expect them to make changes. Like, it just doesn't happen. So it's
that doesn't work. The research shows it doesn't work.
Right. We have to motivate them and make the business case.
Yes.
And even for governments, they need the business case as well. So
100%. Well, let me wrap it up there at the top of the hour. First, everybody in the audience, thank you so much for coming out. It was awesome having you. If you had a happy father, if you were a father, happy Father's Day to you all. Jeff, thanks so much for coming on for our first time. I hope we can have you back on and talk about the SDLC or things that are more
anything more positive.
Aren't this secure by design with Phyllis, Patrick. Always good having you back. Thanks for doing this in short order. Kelvin, always great to have you, man. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Gosh, you're putting on some miles. I expect you to be in first class on your way over here with all the.
I always fly first.
Remember, he's got that room full of money. So, yeah.
Exactly. Dink. He's a dink.
Bob, thanks for filling in. Phyllis, always great to see you. And we'll see you guys next week. Oh, there's Ash. Good to see you, Ash. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.